Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us. Hey, everybody, this is JP O'Brien, and I'm really excited. Mike Weeks, a good friend of mine here, who is a coach and a trainer to a lot of folks in really stressful times and under pressure. I'll let Mike give some background on that, but he's got some amazing tactical and very practical strategies as you're thinking about not just for yourself and your family, but also for your employees and the community near you. So, Mike, thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. I'm sorry that I can't just cycle 1 mile down from my house to your place to actually be with you in person, but under the current self-imposed quarantine, here we are doing it remotely.
Yeah. So, Mike, just maybe start off by giving us a little bit of background on you, so the viewership here can really get a sense of who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, sure. I am the co-founder and co-CEO of a company called Frontline Minds. We work with the likes of the US Marine Corps. I've worked with a multitude of former Special Forces veterans, specializing in PTSD and resilience training. We also work with professional athletes down in Australia, combat athletes, Olympic Taekwondo medalists. In the UK, I've worked with UFC fighters, top 3 UFC fighters, worked with executives in all sorts of organizations. And my speciality, probably since 2010, has been everything around stress, around resilience, and around recovery. My background, before I went to Haiti in 2010, so I left school, dropped out of school when I was 16, became a free climber, traveled the world, went to 54 countries, rock climbing, putting up new routes and climbing a lot without ropes. So I did that for 10 years, living in very, very high risk situations. Traveling around the world, living in the Belizean jungle, the Peruvian Amazon, like I said, 54 countries. And in 2000, so after climbing, I became a coach. I started working in London, working with a lot of professional athletes, a lot of professional climbers, a lot of execs. And then in 2010, the Haiti earthquake happened, and I went to Haiti to go and support, or what I thought I was doing was supporting psychologists who were down there working with PTSD. And when I got there, I realized that I was the only person there who had any mental health training skills. No psychologists had turned up, certainly not at JPHRO, which was Sean Penn's camp. So for over 3 different periods there, which totaled for about 10 weeks, I was in charge of all PTSD and recovery for 50,000 internally displaced people in Pétionville, up on the golf course, with Sean Penn as my boss. And on the back of that, when I got back, I pretty much pivoted all my work to be about stress, to be about PTSD, to be about resilience. And I've been doing that now, well, what is it, 10 years. And so that's our speciality in our business. We also work communication, leadership, and also in crisis, which, as you might imagine right now, is something we're being tapped up for quite a lot. The kids are at home and they're coming in to get their games. And my new makeshift office at the back of the yard is too far away from the Wi-Fi signal for us to do.
Start with this. This is a great example. We're at home, right? We got kids, we got dogs, we got noises. So how are we going to deal with this? Like, tactically, help coach me right now. You know, how am I going to deal with this? The house is much smaller than I thought it was. We're trying to get all stuff done. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. So look, we're being requested by a lot of people in a lot of different domains at the moment for support. And it doesn't matter whether you are some major league exec who has lost millions or even hundreds of millions of value off the business. It doesn't really matter whether you are a mum who has a part-time job and you now have to stay at home because of your kids. It doesn't really matter whether you are a pro athlete whose all of your matches or your fights or whatever it is this summer have all been cancelled. It doesn't matter who you are. At the end of the day, the key starting point for being resilient and being able to get through what we're being faced with right now is the ability to be able to choose your state and to know that the problems that we're facing are not the problems. It's going to be the reactions and the way that we respond to it, which are going to be the problems. If we lose our state, if we lose our head, if we lose our ability to become resourceful, to come up with clever problem-solving solutions, to activate plan Bs, to activate networks, to activate communities. If that goes out the window because we're overstressed, because we're anxious, and in some cases, not just anxious, but off the scale, in hyper arousal state, then the game is lost. This stage, we absolutely have to focus both inwards on our capability and our ability to be able to be resourceful. And we also have to consider about our effects in the ecosystem, both our immediate, in my case here in my little street, and my neighbors, and the little old lady who lives up the road, and my family, and my business, and then the bigger network and the bigger community, which is what you and I are focused on. How many people can we activate to make a difference? How many people can we activate to be resilient and resourceful? How many people can we support? How many people can spread the messaging, and and the ultimate need, which is that we need to be able to pull together, but we need to be able to pull ourselves together first. And at the moment,
so give me some tactical things. I'm here in my house, second day of self quarantine. Should be in the office. Internet's going up and down. So how do I not lose what's some tactical things you can teach me right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, in your case, you're one of the most resilient people that I know. And having just lost the opportunity to put on the summit that is going to be happening in May, that you've put pretty much all of your resources into, all of your time, all of your attention, and that's gone. And then when I asked you a week ago, I think when I was in Dubai, how that was looking, and your response was one just like it is now, which is calm, and it was somewhat relaxed, and you had reframed it immediately. And I don't know if you'd reframed it the moment that you realized it was not going to happen, but you have a capability of reframing the event, and this is incredibly important. So we get activated into unresourceful states, undesirable states, let's say stress, let's say anxiety, not because the environment itself is stressful or because the events are stressful. It's the meaning that we create around those events. We as human beings are meaning-making machines. It's really important to understand that the meaning that we make from the environment around us is mostly happening unconsciously. We take in information and then we filter it really fast, and we find some level of criteria that we've already created, like this is good or bad, this is indifferent, right, this is incredible, this is, and none of that stuff is fixed.
Right.
So right now, I'll be really honest with you. We lost in the last 2 weeks, we lost about $800,000 of work. I was faced with a week ago when I was in Dubai, where I'd gone over to land some other work that was going to be training work, which we now can't do, faced with something of what some people would say would be a catastrophe, especially for a small business like us with less than a dozen people in it. And I'm very aware of my own patterns, and there was an initial response of, oh fuck, an initial activation of my nervous system, which told me that I needed to get into action. And I did what I do in most situations where I'm being activated unconsciously. I take a literal step back and I go into an observer on mic. And so I'm now in a third position, and I'm looking at Mike, and from my observer third position, I'm changing my breathing. And by changing it, I'm making it deeper and I'm making it slower. And I'm making sure that my
so just to understand this, so what you're doing is you're pulling yourself out, you're creating a different viewpoint on the physical mic, and then you're almost like remote controlling the physical mic.
Well, I'll get into remote controlling. So let me dial it back a bit. You're either, when you're experiencing stress or any state, you're either associated to it or you're dissociated to it.
Okay.
So dissociation is essential, and it's a component of our neurology that we've had for, since day dot, we would assume. People who get traumatized become deeply dissociative to the experience, because if they keep reliving it, it's too painful. Now, in many cases, it's actually better to have the dissociation that happens naturally than it is to try and relive the trauma through some kind of therapeutic talking process. And we know from all of the firefighters who got messed up after 9/11 that the firefighters who didn't engage with the talking therapy processes were way better off, because we have a capability to dissociate from undesirable states. Now, this can be useful, and it can also be debilitating, because if you're somebody who has, for instance, been in war, if you're a special forces soldier and you have become so dissociated from the acts of having to kill and the acts of war, when you then come back into your family life, if you're not able to reassociate to the warmth and the love and the pleasure and the connection with your family members,
right.
You become something of a robot. And you'll find this with medical practitioners. Like right now, most medical practitioners need to dissociate deeply from what's going on in their workplaces, because they're going to be overwhelmed. And if you're associated to the experiences of other people, if you're feeling what they're feeling, empathy, you're going to be screwed. You're going to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Especially if these figures of the amount of deaths that we're going to be seeing in this country are anything even remotely accurate. So it's essential that we know that we can dissociate and we can reassociate. When I take a step out, and I've taught this to literally thousands of people over the last 19 years. When I take a step out from my experience, I'm observing Mike in a dissociated position. So I literally have a physical position I will go to. I have that. I have an anchor that's like this, which is that thinking pose.
Anchor, yeah.
Which is a bit cliche, but this is a physical anchor. I don't need to do it that often, but sometimes when I sense that there's some overwhelm, or I'm just not computing, or I don't have enough clarity, I take a step away from my and I look back in. And only from other start to see what he's doing, how he's reacting, where he sits within the ecosystem of his world and his life. And from there, what I'll actually do is I'll identify from the third position, what's the kind of state that I need Mike to be in? Bearing in mind that our state dictates our behavior. If Mike is anxious or stressed, or Mike is depressed, his behavioral response to the problems or the context or the challenges around him is going to be very different than if Mike is confident and curious and relaxed,
sure,
and whatever it is, it's optimal. So going to your metaphor for a remote control, I will then literally observe how I want to make changes in Mike's neurology. So it might be that he needs to breathe differently, and that's always a foundation. I've never seen anyone who is stressed, panicked, anxious, burned out, who is breathing slowly and deeply with rhythm into their abdomen. Never seen that. I don't know if you have. What you actually see is people who are, and you can hear that when anytime you see someone who's given a public speaking, and that you know that they're nervous because they're talking in really fast, right? Well, yeah, that's a signal of what's going on in the neurology. And at the same time, we can reverse that. And we know from all of the research papers, pretty much everyone will know this now, that by changing our breathing, we start to switch over from the sympathetic, the fight or flight, into the parasympathetic, which is more the rest and relaxation and recuperation. Now, this isn't it. That isn't. Yes, breathing helps, but there's a much more to it. We do that as a foundation, as a baseline. So from over here, if I notice that Mike's overreacting and his breathing's gone to shit, and actually, as I'm talking to you now, I notice I had a second coffee this afternoon because I was up at 4 a.m. because of my workload presently, and I can tell that my nervous system is getting a bit activated. So I'm going to slow it down now. And now I'm actually looking from the side at Mike from over here, because I've shifted my perception about what's going on and the need to hit more practical points. So having this ability to take a different perceptual position, it gives you space, it gives you insight, and it enables a dissociation. Just to add to that, there's a study, I think it was out of Michigan University, we've got references, that showed that even talking about your problem in a third position, so Mike now has more work to do tonight than he can possibly handle, is different to I have more work than I can handle. And it's just a matter of seconds before that lowers the arousal and the stress state, just talking about in the third.
Okay.
So,
So I'm gonna break this down because I'm really curious about this. So one of my friends, I mentioned this on the conversation with Fred. One of my friends, his girlfriend stuck in Milan with her 2 kids, trying to help her, feeling helpless. 2 days ago, his brother living in Mexico has a heart attack. He flies down to Mexico to be helpful there. That next day, yesterday, his girlfriend's mom dies in Arkansas. He tries to fly back. So here's a scenario where you have a pretty successful thinker doer in this space, having these kind of variables that feel outside your control. So what are I heard you say a couple of things. One, there's this framing thing, there's this disassociation piece, and there's this breathing. If you were coaching my friend at this moment, just walk me through the 3 steps.
Yeah, sure. So you can reframe any event, right? Last year, my grandmother who raised me, she died, and she died with dementia. And it was really easy to reframe her death, even though I wasn't able to get there in time, because she'd had dementia. I was able to say to myself congruently, so that I really felt what I was saying to be true, that she was better off passing away because it was better to pass away than it was to live with dementia. That's one way of reframing, right? My brother, on the other hand, all he can think about is how much he's going to miss her. And he's still to some degree suffering from it now and just won't accept the fact that there is some other reframe on it. If we get trapped into thinking that our reality is absolute and that our view of reality is real, then we're in big trouble. We have to have, it is useful, highly useful, to have flexibility in the way that we can think. If you were completely intent upon your event being the only way that you could move forward and be of impact this year in the world, and there was no other way, well, you're screwed, because the environment is not letting you have that event. The world around you is not letting you have that. And I'm going to get into shortly why it's important that you always have a plan B for resilience, and a plan C and a plan D and a plan N. But so I have avoided over the years, when people lose people that they love, attempting to reframe it, because I actually think that there is an essential period of grief for a period of time where you actually allow your system to feel it. I am somebody who, irrespective of what's going on around me in the world, and so is my business partner and many members of the people of the team that work with us, we're like robots sometimes. We are disconnected and dissociated from what other people would get really stressed about. And that's really useful when you can identify the context in which you're responding to is one where if you overreact, it's not going to make any difference. I don't really know of any situation where being stressed is useful. I don't really know of any situation where being anxious is useful. So then if you have the tools to not do that, why, don't do it. But I do think that there are certain states, like grief, where it is useful to actually experience that. So I know we're getting specifically into the weeds here, but I think this is relevant because there's going to be a lot of grief in the world in the coming months. If we lose 1.5 million people in this country, even if they are not to us, there's going to be a huge amount of grief, and there's going to be a huge amount of trauma, and we need to recover fast from it. But we don't need to move so fast from our sense of loss that we don't actually gain valuable information from it and actually valuable meaning. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a balance between being completely dissociated because you don't want to experience stress or any of the undesirable states, and also knowing that there are certain times and contexts, like right now, I think it is okay to experience a little bit of anger about certain things that are going on in the political world. And that anger might inspire movement, and it might inspire action, and it might inspire, as long as it doesn't get overdone. But the question is, and this is what I'm leading up to, is do we have a choice? So I allowed myself to feel grief for a couple of days when my grandmother passed away. And I went fully into it, and I didn't use any of my clever techniques. And then I knew that once I had to move on and be present for my family and my work, and we cremated my grandmother, that I was not going to experience grief again. Just not doing it. And so I shifted my state. I changed it just like I would change an item of clothing. But I had the experience of it, so there's no doubt that I knew that I was feeling a sense of loss because of a previous sense of love.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we don't become like robots. But right now, for me, the most pressing urgency is that as people start to panic, because we're moving into completely unknown territory for so many people who are not prepared, and people are losing their jobs, and people are losing, going to be losing family members, is if we as communities and as a town and as a country, as a nation, are going to recover fast, people are going to have to be resourceful. And you don't get resourceful when you're under huge amounts of strain and activating a stress state.
To jump in there, we had this conversation with a few other folks the other day about, we don't think that this is going to be the big one, but if there is a larger incident coming down the road, this is good work. This is an opportunity for us to really practice together. And, assuming that we do really well here in the next few weeks, not to say we're not going to have tremendous loss on that side, but we need to decide if we see these things as an apocalyptic or as a renaissance. And I think that's kind of an important, I think that's kind of what you're leading to here. It is mindset and framing. Yeah,
absolutely. There is no absolute reality that any of us knows about. Maybe some Buddhist monk on a misty mountaintop who's been meditating for 30 years has cut through all the bullshit of his own filters, his cognitive filters, and sees reality. We don't. And therefore, if that's the case, then, start choosing the interpretation that you give to the world based on the usefulness of it and how it inspires you to get into action.
Yeah.
I mentioned getting into action specifically because one of the biggest problems we're going to face with people being in potential lockdowns or with restricted movements, if not here, then certainly in other countries, is their sense of being unable to act, to have no agency over your life. Let me give you an example that I think is analogous. So you've got a daughter, haven't you?
Yep.
17, is she 18?
18, just flew her back from the East Coast.
18. All right. So she says, Dad, I'm going to be home by 11 tonight. And you wake up at 3 a.m. and you realize it's quiet in the house and you sneak to her room. She's not there. It's 3 a.m. Right? What the hell? You look at your phone. There's no message. You try calling her. You can't get through to her. You're sitting there now biting your nails and you have a sense of anxiety. Where the hell's my girl? Where's my baby girl? She said she'd be back at 11. She's always reliable. I can't get through to her friends. I can't get through to anyone.
Right.
That signal, what we're calling anxiety or tension or whatever it is, or stress, whatever that is a signal to move into some kind of action.
Okay.
At the point when you identify that signal is saying, okay, you need to do something about this, you will start to lower and dampen the effect of the signal, the undesirable effect. The moment that you say, right, I'm going to call all these parents and then I'm going to create an action plan and here's my map and I'm going to jump in the car. It's not to say you're not going to be activated and there's going to be some adrenaline in the background, but the difference between sitting at home looking at the phone compared to getting in the car with a strategic plan, the difference is huge. Right. It's profound because you're actually acting upon the unconscious signals that are prompting you to get the hell out there and do something. One of the challenges I see in the weeks and months ahead is that people are going to consider that they are unable to do something. And so they get overwhelmed with those signals of anxiety and of stress. And the reality is that if we think about life as a plan, so right now there's a lot of people who had it all planned out and it's gone tits up. One of my closest friends in the whole world owns 22 gyms, and those gyms have been incredibly profitable. And they were until 2 weeks ago, he was looking at some incredible amount of valuation that people were flying in last week to go and have a conversation with him about, taking some of the value off the table.
Yeah, sure.
A week later, he would be lucky if he could give those gyms away, because they're all shut down and they're in countries all around the world that are not allowing gyms to open anymore.
Right.
So completely turned on its head, and the plan was really clear. Now, when we create plans, and we could call the way that we perceive our life to be a plan, we do it on certain factors. We do it on the resources available to us, the people who we're connected to, the context in which our plan is going to play out. I view my life here in Boulder playing out in Boulder, and it involves mountains, it involves skiing, it involves rafting trips, it involves fly fishing, and it involves you and my community.
Yeah.
Now, if all of that's taken away because I lose my visa and ability to stay in the country, and I don't have a plan B, then I'm royally screwed for a period of time. And so having a well thought out plan is incredibly important. But there are certain things we can't control. We can control the rudder and we can control the sails of the boat, but we can't control the wind and we can't control the waves. And so having a clear course over to that horizon, and then the wind comes howling in and we have to go 50 nautical miles south of there because it's just impossible. If you don't actually have a plan B available, then you're screwed. And I encourage people right now to start considering what plan B is, what plan C is, what plan D is, if plan B doesn't work out. Now, this is grueling. This takes a huge amount of effort and it makes a huge amount of impact on people.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as much as if you carry on playing music as the Titanic goes down. So I think it's important to have a life mission and to be mostly all in and to be set on, this is my life and this is the way it's going, like the summit. You were all in on the summit.
Mm-hmm.
I was all in this summer on the TV series I was going to do, and I was all in on this big hiring and onboarding program we're going to do. And right now, all my attention is getting my online resilience programs out, and it's pivoted, and creating a new crisis program. The intention that satisfies the same intention, which is that I want to be able to do the work that I'm best at, and I want to be able to make the maximum impact in my business, and I want to keep my staff paid and fed for and looked after. It's because it's really difficult to get across real valuable messaging in sound bites. It is because we don't exist in sound bites. We don't exist in a linear form. We exist in a very complex ecosystem.
You don't digest in sound bites, right? It's got to be story form. And yeah.
Absolutely. I'd rather sit here and tell you 10 stories about people who've been through worse than what we're going through now and how they've managed to overcome all that, right?
Right.
But I know we don't have time for that. So I think the biggest challenge that people are going to face is the sense of loss of agency, not having control over their own lives, because we're going to be enforced potentially on restrictions and movements. There's going to be potential restrictions on what we can get, what we can achieve, and so on. We're going to be out of jobs and out of business. My absolute first foundational piece is to take a step back, figuratively and physically. Look at yourself and how, as an observer, not with all of the sensations flooding of feeling anxious and panicked and everything else, but take a step back, breathe, look at yourself and how you sit into your small world or your large world or whatever it is, and ask yourself, what are the options that I have available to me right now?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the options that I'm not even thinking about? There's a plan B, but what's plan C and what's plan D? And if I can't leave my house, so I've got a podcast after this with a personal training company, and there's tens of thousands of personal trainers who now no longer have work, right? Now, not all of those personal trainers can immediately go and create an online program that they can sell or do one-on-one coaching online. But I guarantee that every single one of them has some degree of resource or some degree of connection to resourceful people where they can actually do at least something and make some difference to their lives right now, rather than sitting at home, watching Netflix, reading the bloody news constantly about the latest outbreak,
right?
And assuming this is it.
So, Mike, I know you have this resilience course. I think, if I'm not mistaken, like University of Melbourne is using it and others. Is that right?
Presently, we have hospitals in Tasmania. We are about to start working with USC Hospital Medical Center in LA. The Marine Corps have used our resilience course. You can see them doing our training online. A number of universities.
And how long is the course? How many hours?
I think it's about, last time I checked, because we're always adding to it, it's about 30 or 40 lessons. And it's a deep dive. It's, I touched on just some of the minor points of the patterning. It teaches people how to, first and foremost, manage their state. It teaches them how to set outcomes. It teaches them how to get out of problem remedy loops. It teaches them how to understand intentions and satisfy those in the moment. It teaches them how to plan effectively. It teaches them how to get into flow states. Pretty much everything we've ever been able to identify over the last 15 years of working in resilience, every pattern, method, and process that works, and there's no mindful.
So this is what I'm getting at, right? It's like you've been training this to all these groups successfully individually. Then you put this whole thing into an online course. Major organizations have said, hey, this is something I want to teach my cohorts, whether they're students or practitioners or special forces folks. And here we are, and what a great time. And so what I was hoping to do, like when you and I were talking just yesterday, I was like, imagine what we could do is if during this time, instead of freaking out, we could give people the opportunity to reframe and saying, what if I was like a black belt in resilience and understood these techniques right now, so that whether it shows up, whatever happens tomorrow, but also as we come out of this thing, imagine if your entire workforce, your partner force could just be upgraded in like these techniques.
Imagine you've got 500 people working for you and they're all at home. And because of the downtime, they've got a lot of hours where they can be doing online learning. And all of those people in the moment start using the methodologies in our program. And I want everyone to have it. But you've got 500 people who all train in resilience, and not just for now, but when they come back, and they come back into the offices and they come back into the normal working zone, if that such a thing happens, they're all coming back with these methodologies. It's like a shared language and a shared understanding that will create high performing teams and high performing.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the language piece, imagine, I mean, even in our community, I want to talk about reframes all the time. And we're doing that already with the entrepreneurs and the investors that we have, and people that, get into a place of anxiety, and then just a quick conversation together, we start to reframe, and all of a sudden they leave excited, right? And so imagine, again, a workforce that independently can start to share these, their real issues or their real concerns, but then also be able to reframe it and have that language to be able to talk about that. I suspect there's going to be a bunch of leaders, CEOs, even the head of human resources and whatnot that would want to get out in touch with you. How do they reach out to you?
People can reach out to me at mike@frontlinemind.com. One thing that we're trying to work out now, JP, is discounting what we've got so that people who are potentially losing their jobs or don't have a reliable source of income are able to actually access our programs. And we're working out what we can get away with discounting the absolute maximum at the moment. And so if people want to reach out to me as individuals, they can do that. And just email me at mike@frontlinemind.com. As individuals who have access to skill sets, or like yourself, you're a naturally resilient person, and by naturally I mean you've already figured out a lot of these patterns, as have I know that there are people out there right now who have not. I deal with them, I work with them every day, and the number one thing we can do for our communities is to step up to the mark and to show what it looks like to be rocks in the storm. We need to be the islands that people can swim to get out of the waves. And the more resilient we are, and the more that we can actually show that, the more likely we are able to pass that on to people. So, if I'm going to leave the audience with any message, it's that those people who can actually handle what's coming ahead, or that can, learn how to handle what's coming ahead, make sure that you are out there showing it in the world. Don't be spreading fear. Don't be spreading, rumors. Don't be showing, you know, stress and the likes. Be the rock and let other people benefit from it.
Yeah, I agree. And I would even add, just to add on to that, is I'm encouraging people to like step into the wind, step into the hail, and knowing that you have the resource to not be stressed, knowing that you have the ability to use that, like you will get stressed. That's okay. Then reset, reframe, and be the person that's pushing right now, because we need more people pushing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mike,
And
I appreciate your time.
I salute you, JP, for everything you're doing right now, bringing all the community together.
Yeah, well, let's do more. We'll, I know we're talking about some other activities, so we'll get those things done, but I wanted to get this information and specifically some of the resources you've already put together out to the community. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.
All right. Take care of yourself. Bye.